Brian, a lot of us listen to all this nutrition information about the concerns about salt and sugar and fat and animal products and refined products and chemicals, and we say, you know what? My parents lived to like 80, and I eat healthier than them, so I guess if they live to like 80, I'm good to like at least 86. So pretty much everyone's thinking like, we're really, as much as you're saying all these scary things about food, really it's not that big a concern, because certainly we know that people are living longer than ever, we're told, and we're probably going to live longer than our parents. So I guess, the two questions would be, one, why should we be so concerned? Because we're eating better than our parents, I think. We tell ourselves that, and they live to like 80. And then the second would be, if someone was born today, what's so different? I mean, what do you think they're going to experience? What levels of health issues do you think they're going to have in their first 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30, 50, that's different than today? Because I guess the summation of talking to most people is it's not really that bad enough in front of them. Their parents are still alive. Their uncle lived to 88. So they feel like all this stuff about chemicals and GMOs and processed food, can't be that bad. So, are we, tell me what?
This is a very, very simple answer for me to make. I'm fortunate to be on the front line of catastrophic changes every day of my life. From the time I was a young man and extremely concerned about the plummeting health of humans worldwide, I must have gotten a little calmer, because things are probably 4 times worse in 4 decades. It used to be much easier at the Institute to deal with people my age and in their 70s and 80s with cancer, because we've had a life. But now the statistics and my massive experience shows that what used to take 50, 60, 70 years to contract, we contract in 5 to 10 years. Because of genetic modification, because of cell phones, because of the consumption of meat and dairy food. Number 2, your grandparents lived on a pristine planet. In the earlier panel, I pointed out that tomorrow Dr. Anna Maria is going to be showing you a graph that in 1980 was not the Dark Ages, it was 30 years ago, that the developed countries were significantly sicker than the under or undeveloped countries. Currently, the undeveloped countries are as sick as we are. To make it very clear, there's going to be wars, because we are going to run out of water in the next 15 to 20 years. As Dr. Oppenlander writes so articulately in one of his books, that the largest pure water aquifer on the planet Earth is in the western part of the United States. He may correct me, but I think it supplies the water for 17 states, and 70 to 80% of that water goes on raising animals so people can get sick and have heart attacks, strokes, cancers, and the list goes on and on and on. This is insanity that we have right here at the United Nations, blocks from here, extremely important discussions on a yearly basis about global warming, and not one person stands up and discusses the meat and dairy issue. That is conservatively 30% of all of that problem, and possibly 40 to 50% of it. And then we could have a whole other conference on why heart disease, cancer, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, diabetes, Lou Gehrig's disease, and the list goes on, is skyrocketing. You may not be in an office with patients seeing people as I am every day. Let me promise you, diseases that were non-existent when I was a boy are now catastrophic diseases. Your grandparents grew up in an organic world. The first person that ever supported me when I went home and announced to my New York area parents that I gave up meat and dairy food, they actually thought I had gone bonkers. They knew I was crazy to begin with, but they really thought this was it. He must be suicidal now. Because corporate interests have so embedded in your minds, and even some of you sitting here struggle with this currently, that if you don't eat meat, you're going to starve of protein deficiency. The day I stopped starving of protein deficiency is the day I gave up meat. If you don't take dairy food, that you're actually going to have bones crumble. The day I gave dairy food up, I began to lose more than 100 pounds. And forget what it did physically, because why we should eat this way is for consciousness, awareness. If you come out of the darkness and the negativity and the depressed state of mind that doing the wrong thing puts you in, not only morally, but I mean biochemically, you will start to become part of the solution. If you come to conferences like this and listen to conferences like this on the internet today or 20 years from now, and you're not part of the solution, shame on you. So we cannot compare grandparents. My grandmother came to me when I announced I'd be a vegan and said, "It's okay, I know you're not going to be sick because I guess I was a vegan when I was a little girl." In my grandmother's generation, people did not eat copious amounts of meat and dairy. As a matter of fact, statistically, we eat in every socioeconomic group in the last 4 generations 4 times more meat and 4 times more dairy. The only people that ate meat and dairy in those days in large amounts were the aristocracy, the very wealthy. And who were the sick people? We have the data. This isn't speculation. If I went to Sloan Kettering and pulled out data from 1900, you'd see what neighborhoods those people were coming from. And the peasants, most of our families, by the way, were not sick. They were eating plant-based organic diets. So comparing what we have now and try to lie to the public and say that we live longer, this is insanity at its highest degree. I challenge any doctor, any statistician on the planet Earth to debate me on this one. How they manipulate you on those numbers is it was very common for babies to die at birth or within 1 year. And that was extremely common. At one point, 1/4 of babies born in families, remember families were 10, 12, 15 children, died before they were 1. My aunts, my grandparents would say, "Oh, I remember the twins. They were so cute. They died at 9 months old. I remember my poor little brother. We got to see him for a day." This was a common story. Now, modern medicine's not all bad. We're not here to beat up all modern medicine. Modern medicine is really good in one area, diagnostics. Once they diagnose you, run. Because they sure don't know the remedy, but the diagnosis is great. And they started to look into women's bodies when they were pregnant and saw an umbilical cord around the neck, and the baby was turned in the wrong direction, a breached child, and that's why babies were dying. And conditions were not sterile, not that hospitals are today, but there was a period until 25 years ago where hospitals were much more sterile than the average home. And how many of you know that you have a much higher rate of infant mortality at hospitals giving birth than you do with home births? And if you say, "I'm going to have a home birth," oh my God, you're like Satan. They're going to tell you, no, not. And I'm not suggesting to have that without a professional, a midwife, a doctor involved in it. But, everything is skewed. So we don't live longer today. How can we when half of us this year, 2014, America will have cancer as our #1 disease killer? Still, 48% of us will die of a heart attack or stroke. Diabetes has tripled in the last generation. And our children contract 2 times more diabetes than grown adults. 72% of our children are overweight, obese, or morbidly obese. If you saw what Dr. Deal showed, he only showed every 5 years. I do that with a film every year. The increase in obesity in the United States from 1980 on. It is stunning. It's shocking when you see this. Stunning and shocking. And obesity is where genetic modification, fat, is going to maintain itself, and where heavy metals and chemicals are going to maintain themselves. And this is going to create disease, mental and physical disease. So I challenge anyone who's lethargic and passive, who thinks that some magic is going to happen, to realize that you're insane. That the only magic that's going to happen if you awaken and start to do something.